So after the success of our last video on the history from the streets of Toulouse, this is part 2, where we're going to be starting off in a place called Les Carmes. Susan will tell you all about Les Carmes in a minute, but first of all she's going to tell you what we're going to be doing this afternoon. So what are we doing this afternoon, Susan?
Well, first thing is to get out of this car park. We're really high up. We've got a fantastic view. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through the streets, again looking at street names. I think this time I might know some more about it. So watch out.
This is a very beautiful and grand building in the Place des Carmes. Now let's go and find out about the Place des Carmes. Here we are in Place des Carmes, and Susan's going to tell us all about the Carmes, the history. So tell us about the history of the Carmes, Susan.
I will do. So we've come down from the top and now we're on the bottom, and I think I can actually tell you some stuff here. Place des Carmes. So it comes from it was originally a convent in the 12th century, and Carmes, it's the Carmelites, okay? And it was a really, really beautiful convent. But of course, over the years, it's changed its name, as happens a lot in Toulouse. During the Restoration, it was another name. Then during the Revolution, of course, it became Place de la République. And then back in, I think, 1808, it came back to be called Place des Carmes. You've got it all.
This is the car park des Carmes, where we were just a minute ago. It looks really nice from the top. And there behind those shutters is the Marché des Carmes. It's the market, very good market. And they also do a night market at times, especially at Christmas. It's really, really good. It's called a night market. And building is the Caisse d'Épargne. So it's a bank. Unbelievably beautiful. This is a Rue du Canard, very Toulousain, you would think, but it was called, I think Susan's going to tell us. She's frantically signing to say nothing.
So Chris, I've got a question for you. Here we are in Rue du Canard, and in Toulouse everybody eats duck. So what do you think happened on this street?
Was it a duck farm?
It was not. Okay, let me tell you. In fact, this was it was a change of letters, a change of sounds, really. The original name in the 12th century was Rue de something like Caghar. My Occitan is not very good, you know. Anyway, over the years, they changed it to Canard.
So behind there at the end, you can just see it, and we'll go there later, is La Dalbade, l'église La Dalbade. Rue des Pollinaires. Rue des Pollinaires, it's kept its name since the 14th century, and in fact what it means is people who polished metal. So down here were people that polished metal for all sorts of things, engineering and also for armaments. And this is Rue des Filatières. What is Rue des Filatières?
Well, I'm on a big guess here. Fil, which is kind of a French word for like cotton or threads. So I'm going to guess it was like textiles or something like that, but that's a pure guess.
But I think you're right.
Oh my goodness me.
It is,
I'm
yes.
on a roll today.
They were the people that did weaving of textiles.
Oh, right.
There you go.
Right next to the guys doing the heavy
Polishing.
metals.
Yeah, it was a hive of industry.
Yes.
And here is Rue des Filatières in the Carmes. And if you know this guy, very famous French guy who was famous for burning a 500 franc at the time note to light his cigar on TV. It was, of course, Serge Gainsbourg. So talking about Serge Gainsbourg, here is a fun fact. Well, maybe it's not fun, but his name was actually Lucien Ginsberg, and he was Jewish, and during the war his parents sent him from Paris to a little village just right next to Oradour-sur-Glane, where there was a huge massacre by the SS Das Reich, where they killed every single villager. And so going away from the supposed danger of Paris, he ended right up in it. I mean, he didn't get caught in that, but him and his sister survived the war in the Haute-Vienne department in Limousin, in a small village near Oradour-sur-Glane. So this is the Rue Juxte Aiguë, and it takes its name from a confluence of two rivers, and it says on the sign that it was in the Jewish quarter, which is not too far away from here.
Well, in fact, this road is really, really interesting. And if you look at the road sign, it had two names, in fact. The first one being Sesquière, Sesqui, meaning in Occitan, meaning putting the straw base on a chair. And then it changed in 1631 to Maltache. And this is where, if you remember, in the previous street, people were, it was the street of people making clothes. This is where they took the stains and the marks out of clothes.
Okay, Maltache meaning bad stain.
So next time you get a little
or
mark
bad task
on your clothes, this was the street to come down.
Wow. If you were here in...
Yeah,
well,
you had to be here quite a few centuries ago, but you know.
So this is the Rue des Quatre Billards, and the Quatre Billards takes its name from a cafe that used to be here. And the cafe was really famous at the time of the interrogations of the affaire Calas, which was, as you'll find out afterwards, was very famous in not only the history of Toulouse, but also the history of France. And in the Middle Ages, this was called the Rue des Sesquières Neuves. And as we found earlier from Susan, the Sesquières were people who made the filling for straw-stuffed chairs. So this was the house of Jean Calas, known as l'affaire Jean Calas. And Susan will tell us about it. You can see what's written there.
So as you said, Chris, a really famous place for Toulouse and for France. Jean Calas, he was a Protestant living in France during the time when everyone was basically a Catholic. Anyway, his son was found dead in this very house. He was, I think, found strangled. Anyway, crowds and people thought that it was the father that had killed the son because he wanted to convert him to be be a Protestant. Anyway, the evidence was, I don't know, yes or no, but Voltaire, a very famous philosopher, he said that we should be more tolerant of these situations and more tolerant of different religions, but the crowd was having none of it. And he was dragged to a place near here called Saint-Georges, and he was killed by the crowd. A few years later, the case, let's call it the case, it was re-evaluated, and he turned out to be not guilty.
Yeah, and it was Voltaire, as you say, that actually defended him, and he sort of whitened his name. But
yes.
There was a lot of things in this. In fact, apparently Jean Calas was like really big, weighed about 150 kilos or something like that, and his father was really short, so he couldn't have really done it, or the other way around. One of it. Anyway, it was not very probable that he actually killed him, but it was just a thing of religious fervour.
It was, and people were very intolerant in those days, and so Voltaire, he wanted tolerance at all times and wrote many books and philosophical treatises all about tolerance. His name is there. And
this is how Toulouse used to look, and it very much still looks very much the same, more or less. I don't know where this date's from. So this is Rue de la Coque d'Inde, so it's the cockerel of India, which was probably named after an inn which was here. However, before it was called Rue des Dadières, and the Dadières were the people that made dice, believe it or not. Rue des Marchands, basically, it's merchants, it's sellers, selling stuff. Rue des Paradis. It sounds like paradise, but it's nothing to do with that. In fact, what it means, paradis, is in French it's para de drap, and it was the people that finished off the blankets and sheets, did the finishing touches. So very much in line with the textile that was in this area, filatière, etc. This is l'Hôtel de Assisat.
Yes.
It's absolutely fabulous. It's under building, but we'll have a look in anyway. One of the rich merchants of Toulouse. A lot of the wealth of Toulouse came from what they call cocagne. It was a dye which was used to dye textiles blue before synthetic dyes were in, and this is really, it was grown in Lauragais. It's called pastel, and they talk about la vie de cocagne. It's like the life of Riley, a really easy life, and these people grew very, very rich on cocagne until synthetic dyes took over. Rue de l'Écharpe. This was where they made scarves at one time, still in line with the textiles, which was very much a big thing of Toulouse. In July 1580 was born Pierre Gaudelin. It looks like they spelt his name wrong as well, because it says Père, but we'll give him that. And he is, in fact, if you saw our last video of the statue in Place Wilson, the statue is actually of him. He was a poet. Rue des Couteliers, or Carrière des Couteliers. What do you think that is, Susan?
Well, I'm going to guess, as it's like fabrics and pastel, it's a place where people made clothes.
Well, I won't say that's a good guess because it's miles away.
Oh,
it's
yeah?
in fact where they made knives.
Oh, of course.
Couteau, coutelier.
Of course.
It's where they made knives. The descente de la halle aux poissons. Davalada del mercat peçonnier. It is where they had the old fish market a long, long time ago. We'll go down there anyway, but there's not much to see, but we'll go down. There's a bar called the El Dorado, where I sometimes go to not hear Spanish. That is, everybody's speaking Spanish, but it's so loud inside with the music and all of the talking, you can't hear a bloody thing. So my Spanish is not coming on because of that. That's what I blame anyway. After the Halle aux Poissons, the descente à la Halle aux Poissons, you have these lovely little bridges that lead onto the Garonne River. And in the distance, you can just see it. I'll probably go through and point it out a little bit better, is the Pont Neuf. And this big gate, it is a big gate, it is designed to be fixed. It comes across and it stops the floods which used to flood this area. Let's go and have a look at the Pont Neuf. And here, in all its glory, is the Garonne River and the Pont Neuf. And just over there you can see the spire of the Église Saint-Nicolas, which we'll go to on another video. And that in the distance is the Pont Saint-Michel. So this little bit of water, it's not much, is what we call a Garonnette. So it obviously flows into the Garonne and it's a little tributary of the Garonne. So just behind me is the Pont Neuf, which took nearly 100 years to build. Why it took that long is, in fact, why was it built first of all? Well, first of all it was built when the king gave an edict that he wanted a safe crossing of the Garonne River to go to Spain, and it was interrupted by a lot of floods and also the war of religion, the 100 Years' War, and lots of other things. So in fact it went through 3 architects before it was built, and it was finished in 1632. So number 112, Quai de Tunis, which is right opposite the Garonne River. This was where a famous singer from Toulouse called Claude Nougaro he lived, and he actually wrote a song called Il était une Garonne, and he's most famous for his song Ô Toulouse. Il est loin mon pays, qu'il est loin. Enfin, I won't sing anymore because the camera will probably break. And it's always we can hear it when Toulouse score a try in the rugby. Claude Nougaro, 112, Quai de Tunis. Now we're going along the road to La Dalbade. What is La Dalbade? We're going to find out. We have some really fabulous buildings here. Very, very old. So I'm in front of the Church of the Dalbade, which is a bit similar to the dorade we saw in our last video, dorade which was covered in gold. Dalbad comes from the Occitanie to mean white, and it was covered in chalk.
And just to add to that, Chris, I mean, it's a magnificent building, but the very first church built on this site, it was built in 541 BC. So that's a long time ago. I imagine it was a lot smaller.
We'll have a closer look at the doorway, because that's pretty spectacular. The pretty spectacular doorway of La Dalbad, the Church of the Dalbad. And we're going to find out in a second all about the Church of the Dalbad. But it looks like it was a fortified church, just looking at the towers. So Rue de la Fonderie, here it is, pretty self-explanatory really. There was a foundry here, probably for cannons and stuff like this. The Hôtel de Pierre, it doesn't mean Peter, but it means stone, and it comes from the name of, well, the stone that used to be on the facade. But this is another one of those places of these rich Toulousains that got rich during the 16th century through pastel. This is the archway into l'Hôtel de Pierre. Let's have a look what's on the other side. I mean, how rich must this guy have been to have had a place like this? Okay, Toulouse wasn't so developed, but it's massive. I mean, he's richer than Mick Jagger. And in the same road as Hôtel de Pierre is another one. Don't know where we can go in to look, but the facade of this. And as with all the roads, or virtually all the roads we've come across, they all changed name. This is Rue de la Fonderie, and before it was called Rue des Toulousains, people from Toulouse, obv. So Rue des Potiroux, Carrière del Potiron. In the 15th century, it was Brugimonde. So an update on Rue des Potirons. It doesn't mean potiron, like a pumpkin. It actually was the name of one of these rich capitouls who lived down this street. There you go. So, Rue de l'Homme Armé. It means the road of the armed man. Now, I wonder where that come from. And this is the statue of the Homme Armé, or the man, armed man. Rue des Moulins, which means windmills. And in the 12th century, it was Rue dels Moulins de Comminges. Comminges is an area down towards the Pyrenees. So, maybe Susan can enlighten us on this one.
I guess a moulin is like a windmill, but I find it quite difficult to imagine there were windmills here at the time, so maybe something else? But there's another name, it says Comminges, which is a really old name from here, and I think looking on Google it said that it was the count of this area called Comminges. But where...
Who had a chateau here.
The chateau.
Yeah.
Yeah. But where the moulin comes from, I don't know.
So maybe it was because it's called Rue des Moulins, and then it changed to have like a portmanteau name of the Moulin et de Comminges.
Yeah,
maybe it's that.
But where are the windmills?
Well, they won't be here now, will they?
Were they there at the time?
But if they were, they would have been alongside probably the Garonne to get more wind and also to be able to, whatever they were doing, because most of the windmills in this area anyway are for the update on Rue de l'Homme Armé, the armed man. In the Revolution, it was called the Rue de l'Enthousiasme, so Enthusiasm Street. So Rue de la Hache, it means hatchet or axe. But we don't know. We've looked through the history books and we can't really tell why it's called that. Maybe, I don't know, Pigassa? We don't know what that is either. So anyway, it's an interesting name. And that on the left, that big red brick building, is the Palais de Justice. So it's the court. An update on Place du Salem. It wasn't where there was a Salem, but it was where there was a big warehouse or bond warehouse for salt, where they collected the tax from it. And it was here, in this place, because it would have come from the Mediterranean up the old Roman road to Toulouse, where it would have been taxed. And there's another place, in fact, we'll see it in another video, but it's called Croix de l'Huile, and it was where all of the meats and stuff that was coming in to be sold in the market in Toulouse was weighed and taxed before it was sold. Rue de Pharaon. In fact, it sounds like a pharaoh, that's the word for pharaoh in French, but it's actually a deformation of a name, which is...
It's the name Al-Faro. So, Pharaon.
Okay, and he was...
He was the grandson of the Count Raymond VI, who was the Count of Toulouse back in 1276.
Yeah, who worked for the Crusades.
Yes.
Against the Albigeois, not the Crusades in the Holy Land, but against the Catars.
Yeah, and lots of places in Toulouse have got the name Raymond VI.
Yeah. Because all of the history of Toulouse is very much in the history of the Catars as well.
Yeah.
So, this is really faith. And in fact, when we look at the Universitat, it says Capellan. Capellan, very, very close to the word chaplain in English. And that's what it meant, priests.